There is a subtle prison many souls live within, one that's invisible but deeply felt. It's the need for external validation, a quiet craving to be seen, approved of, and affirmed by others. At first glance, it may seem harmless. Who doesn't want to be appreciated? But when validation becomes the measure of worth, a soul begins to forget its own light. Most people walk through life unaware they're in a cage. They post, they speak, they strive, constantly looking sideways, waiting for a nod, a like, a smile, as if someone else must confirm, you matter. This invisible craving starts early. Maybe someone withheld love unless you performed. Maybe you learned that being good meant being approved of. And slowly, piece by piece, you began to trade authenticity for applause. But the soul cannot thrive on borrowed worth. What is praised one day is forgotten the next. And so we chase. You do something, you're noticed, you feel valuable. But then the silence comes. No one claps, no one notices. So you push harder, you shapeshift, you suppress parts of yourself just to belong. And in doing so, you fall into a cycle, a loop of self-forgetting. A loop where being enough is always just one more compliment away. This is not validation. This is addiction. The soul knows it. That tightness in your chest, that ache for recognition, it's your spirit trying to remind you. You were never meant to live this way. Living for validation creates emotional turbulence, anxiety when people don't respond, shame when they disapprove, guilt for saying no, and loneliness, even in a room full of admirers. Why? Because approval is not intimacy. It is not love. It is performance-based attention. And when the soul is starving for love but fed only applause, it begins to fade. Your inner fire dims. You begin to forget the sound of your own truth. The need to be liked is a slow erosion. At first, you just bend a little. Then you silence a part of yourself. Then another. It's an invitation, because the soul only truly awakens when it no longer lives for the eyes of others. Freedom begins the moment you stop asking the world for permission to exist. It begins when you look in the mirror and say, I am enough, not because they say so, but because I am. This shift isn't loud. It's not something others will celebrate. But inside, it's a quiet revolution. You start doing things not for applause, but because they're true to you. You begin honoring your yes and respecting your no. You start listening inward. That is the soul remembering its voice. When the soul is no longer enslaved by validation, intuition awakens. You begin sensing what aligns and what doesn't. You stop fearing rejection because you've stopped rejecting yourself. You let go of toxic relationships that thrived on your silence. You create not for praise, but for purpose. You realize your worth is not performance. It is presence. The trap of validation is cunning. It hides in kindness, in compliments, in smiles. But once you see it, truly see it, you can never unsee it. And that's where your liberation begins. When you stop performing and start being. When you stop chasing and start listening. When you stop dimming and finally shine, you become whole. Not because they saw you, but because you did. So ask yourself today, whose approval have you been living for? And are you ready to come home to yourself? When the soul reclaims its voice, the world may go quiet, but your spirit sings. Thank you for being here. If this spoke to you, like, share, or simply sit with it. Until next time, stay awake. Stay true. Thank you for joining us on your journey. For more content, please hit the subscribe button.